Wood? George demanded. There's plenty right up against the back of that sycamore. Floodwater wood. Now you go get it. Lenny went behind the tree and brought out a litter of dried leaves and twigs. He threw them in a heap on an old ash pile and went back for more and more. It was almost night now. A dove's wings whistled over the water. George walked to the fire pile and lighted the dry leaves. The flame cracked up among the twigs and fell to work. George undid his bindle and brought out 3 cans of beans. He stood them about the fire, close in against the blaze, but not quite touching the flame. There's enough beans for 4 men, George said. Lenny watched him from over the fire. He said patiently, I like 'em with ketchup. Okay, so this reminds me of okay, so it probably wasn't very easy for George to get a hold of these cans of beans, and he's proud of it. He's like, look, we have enough beans for 4 men. But Lenny is mad because he wants ketchup with it. This reminds me of when I cook a big meal for my family, and my 6-year-old son says, could I have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? And then it destroys my soul, and I never want to cook a meal for them again. Do you know what I'm saying? Okay, so Lenny, he doesn't understand that he's being ungrateful, but he wants the dang ketchup. Well, we ain't got any, George exploded. Whatever we ain't got, that's what you want. God almighty, if I was alone, I could live so easy. I could get a job and work and no trouble, no mess at all. And when the end of the month come, I could take my $50 and I could go into town and get whatever I want. Why, I could stay in a cat house all night. I could eat any place I want, hotel or any place, and order any damn thing I could think of. And I could do all that every damn month. Get a gallon of whiskey, or sit in a pool room and play cards or shoot pool. Lenny knelt and looked over the fire at the angry George, and Lenny's face was drawn with terror. And what I got? George went on furiously. I got you. You can't keep a job, and you lose me every job I get. Just keep me shoving all over the country all the time. And that ain't the worst. You get in trouble. You do bad things, and I gotta get you out. His voice rose nearly to a shout. You crazy son of a guy! You keep me in hot water all the time. He took on the elaborate manner of little girls when they are mimicking one another. Just wanted to feel that girl's dress. Just wanted to pet it like it was a mouse. Well, how the hell did she know you just wanted to feel her dress? She jerks back and you hold on like it was a mouse. She yells, and we gotta go hide in an irrigation ditch all day with the guys looking for us. And we gotta sneak out in the dark and get out of the country. All the time, something like that. All the time. I wished I could put you in a cage with about 1,000,000 mice and let you have fun. His anger left him suddenly. He looked across the fire at Lenny's anguished face, and then he looked ashamedly at the flames. Okay, so George goes into this big rant about how much easier his life would be if he was all by himself. But almost immediately, he feels guilty that he said these things because he can see that he's upset Lenny. We did find out something important, though, which is that we found out why they got ran out of their last job site, which is that Lenny did something about touching a girl's dress, and she told him to stop, but he held on tighter. It wasn't done in an abusive way. He was not trying to hurt her. He got scared, and he didn't really know what to do, so he just held on. Okay, so that is the big thing that happened at the last place. It was quite dark now, but the fire lighted the trunks of the trees and the curving branches overhead. Lenny crawled slowly and cautiously around the fire until he was close to George. He sat back on his heels. George turned the bean cans so that another side faced the fire. He pretended to be unaware of Lenny so close beside him. George? Very softly. No answer. George? What do you want? I was only fooling, George. I don't want no catsup. I wouldn't eat no catsup if it was right here beside me. If it was here, you could have some. But I wouldn't eat it none. George, I'd leave it all for you. You could cover your beans with it, and I wouldn't touch none of it. George still stared morosely at the fire. When I think of the swell time I could have without you, I go nuts. I never get no peace. Lenny still knelt. He looked off in the darkness across the river. George, you want I should go away and leave you alone? Where the hell could you go? Well, I could. I could go off in the hills there. Someplace. I'd find a cave. Yeah, how'd you eat? You ain't got sense enough to find nothing to eat. I'd find things, George. I don't need no nice food with ketchup. I'd lay out in the sun and nobody'd hurt me, and if I found a mouse, I could keep it. Nobody'd take it away from me. George looked quickly and searchingly at him. I've been mean, ain't I? If you don't want me, I can go off in the hills and find a cave. I can go away any time. No, look, I was just fooling, Lenny, 'cause I want you to stay with me. Trouble with mice is you always kill 'em. He paused. Tell you what I'll do, Lenny. First chance I get, I'll give you a pup. Maybe you wouldn't kill it. That'd be better than mice, and you could pet it harder. Lenny avoided the bait. He had sensed his advantage. If you don't want me, you only just gotta say so, and I'll go off into those hills right there, right up those hills and live by myself, and I won't get no mice stole from me. Okay, so just to go back to what I was saying about like if I make dinner and my children don't want it, this is also very similar to a parent and a child, right? Mom's like, gosh, my life would be so much easier if I didn't have to do all your laundry and clean up all these toys off the floor. You know how moms sometimes get into that mood and say things like that. So Lenny's like, fine, I'll go run away and then you can do whatever you want, you know? And immediately George is like, no, I want you to stay with me. Okay, it's kind of like a little kid who packs the suitcase and walks down the street saying they're running away, right? Okay, so that's kind of what their relationship is like to some extent. George said, I want you to stay with me, Lenny. Somebody'd shoot you for a coyote if you was by yourself. No, you stay with me. Your Aunt Clara wouldn't like you running off by yourself, even if she is dead. Lenny spoke craftily. Okay, really quickly. Okay, Aunt Clara is who was taking care of Lenny before all of this. Aunt Clara has passed away, and that's how Lenny ended up taking care of, I'm sorry, that's how George ended up taking care of Lenny. And so he says, no, your aunt wanted me to take care of you, and I'm going to take care of you. Lenny spoke craftily. Tell me like you done before. Tell you what? About the rabbits. George snapped. You ain't gonna put nothing over on me. Lenny pleaded. Come on, George. Tell me, please, George, like you done before. You get a kick out of that, don't you? All right, I'll tell you, and then we'll eat our supper. George's voice became deeper. He repeated his words rhythmically, as though he had said them many times before. Guys like us that work on ranches are the loneliest guys in the world. They got no family. They don't belong no place. They come to a ranch and work up a stake, and then they go into town and blow their stake, and the first thing you know, they're pounding their tail on some other ranch. They ain't got nothing to look ahead to. Lenny was delighted. That's it, that's it. Now tell how it is with us. George went on. With us, it ain't like that. We got a future. We got somebody to talk to that gives a damn about us. We don't have to sit in no bar room blowing in our jack just because we got no place else to go. If them other guys gets in jail, they can rot for all anybody gives them, but not us. Lenny broke in. But not us, and why? Because I got you to look after me and you got me to look after you, and that's why. He laughed delightedly. Go on now, George. You got it by heart. You can do it yourself. No, you. I forget some of the things. Tell about how it's going to be. Okay, one of the big themes in this story in this book is the theme of loneliness and friendship. Okay, so basically, apparently this is something that George talks to Lenny about a lot because he hasn't memorized. But basically what it is that a lot of the migrant workers who are going from ranch to ranch, they're traveling all by themselves. They don't have family or friends to check in on them. And so they go and they work, they get their money, they spend all their money on foolish things, and then they go to the next ranch and they work. George says this is a very, very lonely way to live. But he says, we're not like that, Lenny, because we have each other and we're looking out for each other. Okay. This is really encouraging to Lenny. He wants George to tell it to him all the time because he thinks it's really important. Okay. Someday we're going to get the Jack together and we're going to have a little house and a couple of acres and a cow and some pigs and live off the fat of the land, Lenny shouted, and have rabbits. Go on, George. Tell about what we're going to have in the garden and about the rabbits in the cages and about the rain in the winter and the stove and how thick the cream is on the milk like you can hardly cut it. How about that, George? Why don't you do it yourself? You know all of it. No, you tell it. It ain't the same if I tell it. Go on, George. How I get to tend the rabbits? Well, said George, we'll have a big vegetable patch and a rabbit hutch and chickens. And when it rains in the winter, we'll just say the hell with going to work and we'll build up a fire in the stove and sit around it and listen to the rain coming down on the roofs. Nuts. He took out his pocket knife. I ain't got time for no more. He drove his knife through the top of one of the bean cans, sawed out the top, and passed the can to Lenny. Then he opened a second can. From his side pocket, he brought out 2 spoons and passed one of them to Lenny. Okay, so this big elaborate plan that Lenny likes to hear about would be that someday George and Lenny are going to have enough money. They'll save up enough money to go and buy their own little place, their own little house. They'll grow their own food, and they'll be their own bosses, and they won't have to go around and work and all of this. And the more that George tells about it, the more excited Lenny gets. Please also notice in this chapter, the more George talks about it, he gets irritated and he's like, I don't have time to tell anymore. I want you to think about why Lenny might be so excited to hear the details, but it irritates George to talk about it. Might have something to do with the fact that Lenny is more childlike and can have faith in things like this, whereas George, he's been working this job for a long time and he might know that this would be a very difficult goal to achieve. They sat by the fire and filled their mouths with beans and chewed mightily. A few beans slipped out of the side of Lenny's mouth. George gestured with his spoon. What you going to say tomorrow when the boss asks you questions? Lenny stopped chewing and swallowed. His face was concentrated. I ain't going to say a word. Good boy. That's fine, Lenny. Maybe you're getting better. When we get the couple of acres, I can let you tend the rabbits, all right? Especially if you remember as good as that. Lenny choked with pride. I can remember, he said. George motioned with his spoon again. Look, Lenny, I want you to look around here. You can remember this place, can't you? The ranch is about a quarter-mile up that way. Just follow the river. Sure, said Lenny. I can remember that. Didn't I just remember about not going to say a word? Course you did. Well, look, Lenny, if you just happen to get in trouble like you always done before, I want you to come right here and hide in the brush. Hide in the brush, said Lenny slowly. Hide in the brush till I come for you. Can you remember that? Sure I can, George. Hide in the brush till you come. Okay, we've talked about this literary device before, the fact that George is bringing it up that Lenny needs to remember this place because if he gets in trouble, he needs to come back to this same exact spot. That is something that we remember to be called foreshadowing, right? Like maybe hinting that something might happen later on in the book that will require them to come back to this spot. But you ain't going to get in no trouble because if you do, I won't let you tend the rabbits. He threw his empty bean can off into the brush. I won't get in no trouble, George. I ain't going to say a word. Okay, bring your bindle over here by the fire. It's going to be nice sleeping here, looking up in the leaves. Don't build up no more fire. We'll let her die down. They made their beds on the sand, and as the blaze dropped from the fire, the sphere of light grew smaller. The curling branches disappeared, and only a faint glimmer showed where the tree trunks were from the darkness. Lenny called, George, you asleep? No, what do you want? Let's have different color rabbits, George. Sure we will, George said sleepily. Red and blue and green rabbits, Lenny, millions of 'em. Furry ones, George, like I seen in the fair in Sacramento. Sure, furry ones. 'Cause I can just as well go away, George, and live in a cave. You can just as well go to hell, said George. Shut up now. The red light dimmed on the coals. Up the hill from the river a coyote yammered, and a dog answered from the other side of the stream. The sycamore leaves whispered in a light night breeze. Okay, so that's the end of chapter 1. I hope reading it with me kind of helped you guys unlock some of the bigger themes and ideas in that first chapter. You can always email me if you have questions. All right.